I'm just going to go ahead and start our introduction. I'm sure some people will join us as we move along. Good morning, good afternoon, hello everyone. Hopefully I've spoken to most of you, but my name is Alex Donovan and I am a Customer Success Manager on the CleanChain team. So today what we're going to be doing is talking about wastewater. This is the first of our Coffee and Learn sessions, so we're really excited to try this new, shorter format. A lot of you have been with us on kind of those longer customer panel calls, so I think, we're just going to continue moving towards kind of a more shorter, casual discussion-based format. So as we go through this and after today, we'll be sending a survey out. Definitely keen to hear your feedback and what you think of this new format. Today is going to be totally focused on wastewater. So the first part of this session, I'm going to hand it over to my colleague Chris. Again, he's someone that most of you have probably dealt with. He is going to do a product demonstration and actually take you into the wastewater module in CleanChain and kind of show you how that's going to work. Just a couple of housekeeping items before I turn it over to him. You will see that this meeting is being recorded today. We do plan to share that with the people on this call and other CleanChain brands who weren't able to attend today. If you have questions during the presentation, definitely pop those into the Q&A box. And our other CleanChain team members will try and answer those the best as we can as we go along. All right, let me just see if I missed anything important in terms of the housekeeping. And I think that probably pretty much covers it. Chris, I'm going to let you do the product demonstration. And yeah, I'm going to stop talking.
Very good. Hello, everybody. Let me share my screen. We're going to jump into the demo, and mostly our focus is going to be today on wastewater. But before we jump into wastewater, there's always obviously a link between the chemical side and the wastewater side. So I'm going to walk through some new functionality we have of loading the SDS, how that pulls out the CAS number, how we check against the guidelines in the wastewater guidelines to see if that's over on that side. So I'm going to go through a quick loading of an inventory. Obviously, we can do reporting, and then from a brand's perspective, you can roll across. So this is going to be our agenda, and then we'll walk over to the facility, if they're in Gateway, how we migrate the test reports, check against the limits, and then do summary reporting on that. Please, as always, interrupt, pull yourselves off of mute if you have questions or comments or notice something along the way, except for Fleming, who noticed a bug last time I was doing a demo. So let's start. So I'm going to start. Everybody, I'm sure, knows what an SDS is, so material safety data sheet. We like material safety data sheets because they include CAS numbers sometimes. And there's lots of variations and there's lots of issues with the data, but it's the best source of data that we have that we can pull from the facility. So that's why we're starting to use them. So I'm going to go in here as a mill. This is on our demo site. Jump in as a mill. You can see that they're marked as a wet processor and they have a chemical inventory, so they're going to show up on our reporting. And come into chemical inventory products, go over to the SDS section. You'll see they don't have any SDSs in here. And the new request that we have from mills is take their SDSs and go to the upload, and then they can just drag all of their SDSs, so they can just do a big old drag and drop and copy those in. So I'm just taking those 5 SDSs that we have from their site. Every site should have them. Currently, our parsing engine only works with SDSs that are in English. So that's something of a limitation. As we expand this, we'll move it forward. We're also really targeting sections 1, 2, 3, and 9 of the SDSs. So what we do is they get dumped into a parsing queue, and then we start pulling out the information out of the SDSs. And as they parse, it takes a little bit of time so they can go get a cup of coffee. And as we parsed it, I do have one that's already done here at mill 6. So I'm just going to jump over to mill 6 so we don't have to wait for that. And what you'll see is the SDSs were put in. This is a demo, so they've matched. If they don't match, you can set it and pick it. But what we do is we pull out the name, we pull out the formulator, and we do a little bit of like CHT group, might match to CHT group Switzerland or some of the other items. We don't have an exact. And if you look at one of these SDSs, so if we look at the safety data sheet with the enzyme, you can see it has a bunch of those CAS numbers. And so we can pull those CAS numbers out of the SDS and put it into the database. So this is the critical part of that is we've read this PDF, pulled out the CAS number, and stored it with the chemical. And why that's important is once we pull that CAS number out, we can then compare that CAS number in the product from the SDS. We can pull the CAS number out and we can compare it against the wastewater guidelines. So we can make a link over, is there an issue with this product and could it be causing one of the MRSLs to flag in your wastewater guidelines? And then we can do all sorts of reporting on that. So on the chemical side, we finish this up. We can look at the inventory scorecard of the individual site. You see if they have 25 products and 20 of them are identified, 2 of them are commodities, 5 are unknown, meaning they don't have an SDS associated with them. And in this case, there's 1 of them that has a restricted ingredient. So we come down to our table here, we flag the specific product, what the restricted chemical is on that. So, and then for these unknown products, they can come in and click here and upload an SDS. So the idea is we want all of our products to have some type of visibility into the product as they're moving forward. So we've just walked through, did a really quick overview of the chemical side, what we're doing with SDS and chemicals. Any questions on that before we jump over to the water side? Cool. So on the water side, now that we have our inventory, this is the inputs, this is the outputs. Most of our test reports come from Gateway. So the benefits of going from a Gateway test report is, you know that it was uploaded by the lab's verified it, it's gone through their approval process, and yes, that they published it out. You can upload test reports directly into CleanChain, but those test reports aren't verified and they don't have the same level of sort of assurance that you would when you pull something across from the Gateway. But we can accept in test reports from the wastewater side. So we're going to walk through connection, migrating of the test reports, and then the limits and the reporting. So the very first item.
Yes. So we did have a question. Do suppliers have the ability to make SDS sheets private for brands?
Suppliers
have the ability to make SDS sheets private for brands?
No, if the SDS is uploaded by a supplier, then the SDS is available in our library of product chemicals. So it comes in, it's loaded in. We do link each supplier with their SDS. So we know that this supplier, so Mill 1, has a specific set of SDSs that they've uploaded. And then we report on, we make sure that each of the suppliers has their own SDS. So, but those SDS that come into the system are then available within the product library if people are looking at that. Is that a key issue to have the SDSs be private? Who asked the question?
Shelby.
Hey, Shelby.
That was me. we have a few proprietary chemicals in our chemical inventory. So I was just curious whether we would be able to make those SDS sheets private, or, and I mean, you answered my question. They would be available for any user to see in the product library.
Yes, if the supplier has agreed to share their chemical inventory. So when you come into CleanChain, you say, these are the items, we're going to share this information with our supply chain, and then they're available out. So we wouldn't, if they're proprietary, then we wouldn't want them loaded into CleanChain.
Okay, thank you.
Great question. Shelby, great talking to you also, and would love to follow up on that use case if it's common. I don't know if any other brands have similar use cases on that.
Yeah, we're a supplier that's built out as a brand so that we can have our factories, or visibility of all of our factories in CleanChain. So I'm not sure if it's common with other suppliers or not.
Right. It wouldn't be a major feature change to restrict the SDSs just to you or the person who loaded them in. Right now we have a more sharing, but anyways, thank you for that idea. Question. Any other questions on the chemical SDS side? Jump over to the water. All right. So I'm coming in here on the water side. I'm going to jump to Miramil, and you'll notice this new section. Again, I'm logged in as a super user, so I see a whole lot of more items than typically would be seen from a supplier. They'd have a smaller set of options over here. And this Miramil, we're going to assume that they are already in Gateway. And that they have, so I've logged in to the demo account of Gateway as Miro, and they have some test reports over in Gateway. If you haven't seen Gateway or aren't familiar with Gateway, this is the ZDHC Gateway application, the demo version of it. And we have a supplier. This is what they would see. They would have their test reports that were uploaded. They have their numbers, and they're published. So we can see their CleanChain reports, their Clearstream reports within this side. When a user logs into CleanChain, they will have on their profile the ability to establish their ZDHC connection. So if they're doing an in-check report or setting that up, they'll already be connected between CleanChain and ZDHC through their connection. And the first time every page loads here, it takes a little bit. So they put in their username and password. They've already done that for their in-check reports. This will automatically be set up. We pull over their wastewater reporting fee, their in-check fees, and the dates that are associated with that. And then we use that on the water side for the profile. So this person came in, we said, oh, you're already within connected. So this is your name in Gateway. This is your name in CleanChain. You have the subscription, your dates, pulling this all across. And we also start to look at their test reports. So we pull in their test reports and build out their sample sites based on their test reports. And then we pull across their lab data. So here we see that they have these are the 3 from ZDHC that they're pulling in. And we pull across the data and then compare the limits against the guidelines. So we see that there's 191, one flagged as an issue. And in this case, they also have a local permit. So they have the Samovina permit, and they've flagged 3 against that on their Samovina. If we view the results, we can see what those issues were, or the alerts coming through, all these non-detects or not required. So we have something that's pulling and flagging here. All the test reports come across. We have then some basic data dumps that we can do. So we could do summary reports, and we'll take a look at that. So each site by their guidelines, and we run out, take a look at the total alerts, total counts, NAs, MRSL, and conventional. So we have just a quick summary of each site. And then we also, if you want to see the very detailed reports, show in for the detailed reports. And this goes down all the way to the good stuff's here at the end. So if we see the evaluation, if it's a reporting non-detect, there's an alert that comes in, but the value was, the alert here is that we expected the value, but there's no value, so that's an issue. That's all from the supplier side. Again, you could manually upload a test report, see all the same, do all the comparisons against the test report. You can load in permits, local permits. That takes a bit of work to set that up. So there's the setup what we go through for each one of the reports. And then from a brand perspective, we can come in, we can look down at their water, pair by the requirements, and then start seeing that we have, in this period, we have 7 sites that we expected test reports from. 1 of them didn't provide it, and we got 6 that did. 5 of them have alerts on them. I have multiple test reports in here, so the numbers aren't going to match up exactly, but all of the MRSLs, 4 of them passed 100% of the MRSLs, and then 2 of them passed through the conventionals. So we can see that they passed the aspirational, progressive, and foundational levels. And if there's within the supply chain, so Miro Mill has this restricted chemical, again, going back to that CAS number we started, which pulled off the SDS, and so does Mill 6. So you can take a look at these and say, hey, you need to get this out of your supply chain. So those are this is all the functionality that we currently have in the application. As you saw on the little slide here, a box in gray is the next feature that we set up. Well, we're going to have to update to the Wastewater 2.0 guidelines that ZHC just released a couple months ago or a month ago. So that's our next thing, is to get that up to date with their 2.0 guidelines. And then we're going to start tracking caps on, so corrective actions for each of the alerts. We'll go through our application that's setting that up on the caps. A quick demo, turning it over to client Drew in a second here.
Are there any questions for Chris? I just want to give people a second to think about it and the functionality we just saw. We'd also love to hear if there's any functionality you feel like is not planned for. That would be super helpful for you or your brand. We're happy to take that feedback.
Hi, this is Silat.
Hi, Silat.
I have one question. ZDIC also requires the detox.live upload of the results or the corrective action plan. Is there a plan to make it automatic? I'm just envisioning something like, if a factory clicks on a question box that, yes, I agree to forward my report or my corrective action plan to detox.live, then it could go there. I don't know, just for the future. Do you think it's possible?
It would be possible to pull over our data sharing agreement, is we can grab any wastewater data. So if they have a correction action plan, what I've seen with the ZHC corrective action plans is it's largely an unstructured document. They just simply upload that document. What we're envisioning is to have a corrective action plan or a CAP per alert, and then have a mini flow of going through, of setting up the correction action plan. An email goes out to you as a supplier, it goes out to the facility, they type in what they're going to do, they hit submit, you verify it. So we're going to use the action module's CAP functionality to track the corrective action plans when we get it. So it'll be a lot more detailed and a lot more back and forth on each individual alert instead of just a general document. That is my understanding about ZDHC collects the corrective action plans.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Hillary. Anybody else before we move on to the next section? All right. You can always put those in the chat box or the Q&A. Thank you, Chris, for that product demo.
Thank you.
All right, so the next part of the presentation, if you guys need a refill on your coffee, go ahead and get it. But we are going to get into some Q&A with my friend and colleague, Drew O'Neill. So this next part of the section, we are going to go through some questions with Drew. Drew works at Target, and I'll let him introduce himself because I think he could probably do a little bit of a better job. But we have worked together on the CleanChain chemical module, so implementing CleanChain for their chemical suppliers. And then in the past few months, we've been ramping up all of our planning to move on to wastewater for a lot of those same suppliers that do chemical and even other suppliers that aren't using the CleanChain system. Drew, I don't know if you want to take a second and introduce yourself.
Yeah, so I'm Drew O'Neill. I've met most of you at various ZDHC functions. I lead the work for Target to implement our chemical policy, including MRSL for ZDHC, and then our RSL as well.
Thanks, Drew. So Target is actually one of our first clients that is using the new wastewater module. So we're definitely interested in hearing how it's helped them so far and kind of maybe what our pain points have been, and even kind of before CleanChain, just trying to understand like what are the requirements existing for a brand in terms of wastewater and their supply chain. All right. So we can move on to the next slide, which is going to get into kind of some of these more specific questions. So what are some of the challenges your brand is facing in terms of your wastewater program? And maybe, Drew, how these were being tackled before CleanChain and how CleanChain and kind of like what the plan is to address those challenges in the future.
Yes, I think the main thing for us is just kind of getting access to the data. So yes, the suppliers can upload wastewater test reporting into the gateway and we can see it, but when you download or get all that bulk information, it's only looking at it one test report at a time, and it's hard to go through that, especially if you have lots of suppliers into the hundreds that you're trying to sift through data. And so as you're looking at whether it's compliance, trends of common chemicals and things like that, it's been a very manual process to kind of get an access or sort through all of those test reports and that data. And so I think what we see with CleanChain is based off the work on the chemical side, getting that all into one place and getting, you know, that reporting to help get us access to some of those questions or trends or data gaps that we're trying to address will be really helpful and get away from this manual process that we've had. So at Target, we don't have the ability where we're touched into lab system data and get it directly. So because we don't have that and everything's manual, this will help address it more systematically by leveraging the wastewater module in CleanChain.
Thanks, Drew. How do you go about getting your facilities to actively participate in your brand's wastewater program? And have you noticed any obstacles or things that have like made that a little bit harder?
Yeah, so I think for like most brands, so on the call, we have like foundational aspects, but also public commitments. So our foundational aspects are just standards of things within our standards of vendor engagement, where we require our suppliers to identify and characterize all wastewater streams, but also then we set guidelines where we don't want, to ensure pollutants aren't at or in the wastewater stream, so and that they're legally compliant, but and also talking about ensuring they're not having undersized or bypassed wastewater systems as well. And then additional to that, from a public commitment side, we have a public commitment to meet the ZDHC progressive standard by 2025. And then to help ensure suppliers are actively focused, whether it's foundational or those sustainability commitments, we host, trainers for suppliers. And so I think the main obstacle, it's less about participation in trainings or getting their engagement. It's getting access to the data so that we can analyze and determine what the right actions are taking place in the supply chain, or if the right actions are taking place in the supply chain, and how to address them to ensure whether it's our foundational or public requirements are being met.
Yeah, I think that the data piece has come up in our discussions too from the beginning, just being able to get your eyes on it and kind of evaluate how suppliers are doing. I will say for this question, I think a lot, this kind of goes back to your CleanChain representative. I think I spend a lot of time trying to figure out how we can better set up trainings and supplier communication so that it is easy for suppliers to respond and participate in, whether it be chemical or wastewater, in CleanChain. So that's something that we definitely think a lot about, how to frame things to suppliers and how to make clear the value that CleanChain wastewater or chemical would be giving them. Cool, thank you, Drew. How does the CleanChain platform help you achieve your wastewater objective? And I do think this ties back definitely to that first question in terms of being able to see the data and the dashboard. I don't know, Drew, if there's anything else you want to hit on here.
No, yeah, that kind of sums it up. So it'll give us the ability to analyze both chemical and wastewater data together, hopefully in one place. And then it'll also provide a systematic interface to help work with our suppliers on capability building, then also to manage like caps, as Chris was talking about. And then I also think I believe there'll be upcoming APIs for CleanChain and wastewater, so then we can connect that to our internal systems and internal data as well to help kind of complete that picture for us.
Thank you, Drew. And another thing that we've been working with Drew and many of our other brands is, sometimes no matter how great the CleanChain system is and, how much work Chris puts into designing it, sometimes there's something that isn't there. So we work a lot with offline reporting and being able to give people the data that they need in a format that is really valuable for them. And then recently, we're working a lot on how to actually put those reports back into CleanChain so that you guys can access them at any point. So I think there is the kind of standard CleanChain dashboard that Chris showed us. And then, that's a discussion for you and your CleanChain representative to have is, yes, I like this dashboard, but I would really also love to see this. And, just the idea of combining that chemical and wastewater reporting, I think Chris does a great job in the system already of tying that SDS and CAS number and restricted ingredients and saying, hey, I think this failure in your wastewater lab report actually is probably tied to this chemical product that you're using. So just to keep that in mind, I think, we work a lot with making sure you guys are able to see the data that you want. All right, so our last question for Drew. Oh, sorry, did I interrupt someone?
No, I was just going to say, so an example of that is Drew has mentioned that they have their public is all of their suppliers are going to be foundational or progressive. And in ZDHC, a non-detect is marked as foundational instead of aspirational, even though it's a non-detect. And so it would have been impossible for Target to ever achieve their goal because they're always going to get non-detect. So what we've done is a non-detect, we flagged that for Drew and said, hey, if it's a non-detect, we're going to mark it as aspirational because you can't get any better lab test than an aspirational. And so we flagged where we've done that and just did a little bit of custom pulling and modification for Drew specifically.
Thank you, Chris. Yeah, that explains it in a little bit of a more concrete way. All right, our last question is, in an ideal world, what additional features or functionality would you like to see in the wastewater module that would help you achieve your program objectives?
I mean, I think for the most part, they're being covered or going to be upcoming in future editions. So, I mean, one is that tracking compliance in regards to permits and indirect discharge. I think that's always a challenge today as you look through the wastewater data and you see a ZDHC failing, and then you have to go back and look for the permit, especially with indirect discharge. And so ultimately that'll govern to ensure that you're compliant or the facility is compliant. And so having that all in one place will make that easier to understand. And then having the corrective actions in one place as well. So I think those are kind of the key aspects.
I have a question for some of the brands. Does everybody use the ZDHC Gateway, or are there brands that are not, that just collect the wastewater reports directly from the lab and check the standards yourself without going through ZDHC?
Hi, this is Szilárd from Levi's. We are actually downloading, or no, we request the factories to download the wastewater reports from the gateway and share with us. And
so
then
you pull out the PDF. You pull out the PDF and get a bunch of PDFs.
Exactly, and we kind of copy paste, if not type in, to a summary Excel table where we can overview our full supply chain. So this was the practice till now.
And you manually got from the data from the PDFs instead of an export report, or do you now use the export that we provide and
now we are using the export. Yeah.
Okay.
Now we earlier when it was not the case, we always had to work through kind of manually.
Is there anybody else who's still manually pulling the PDFs? If so, we can certainly set up a case where we can pipe out the data, the ZDHC data to you in an Excel file that's, I think, a lot easier to use than what you can get out of ZDHC. So happy to set that up.
We will share this recording with you as soon as it's finished. And I think, if you guys find yourselves thinking about some of the things that we talked about, definitely get in touch with your CleanChain representative. We're always happy to hop on a call with you and do a more in-depth demo and kind of talk about your supply chain and how, wastewater could be implemented for your specific company. With that, anyone from the CleanChain team, I think we're all set. Thank you, Drew, very much for joining us and for going through those questions. I think it's really helpful for other brands. We want to provide a place, like I spoke about in the beginning, for all of us to get together and really just have these group discussions. So I'm excited to continue this format. We're going to have, I believe, 2 other coffee and learn sessions on screened or scored chemistry and SDS parsing. So look out for those invitations. And yeah, there's also going to be a follow-up survey that will open once this meeting ends. So if you have a second, we would love if you filled it out.
Drew, thank you so much for your time.
All right, everyone. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day.
All right.
Thanks, Alex.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys. Bye.